Before we begin the story, Kaylee leave a comment telling me which part of the world you're watching from today. She raised him as her own, gave him everything she had. He repaid her by throwing her out into the street. It was a late Thursday, the kind of day when the sun couldn't decide whether to shine or hide. Evelyn stood on her porch in house slippers, clutching a reusable bag containing a loaf of bread, 2 cans of beans, and a still warm rotisserie chicken whose scent seeped through the plastic. She leaned her hip against the front door and realized something was wrong. The key didn't fit. She tried again, slowly, then faster, turning it as if she were the one holding it wrong, but the lock had been changed. Evelyn tapped once, then again, harder. Still clutching the bag, her soft sky blue cardigan faintly scented with lavender, she stood where she had lived for 22 years. The door creaked open, and Natalie, her son, Ryan's girlfriend, peeked through, raising an eyebrow as if she hadn't expected company. "Oh, hi. You were supposed to come back later," Natalie said. Evelyn blinked. "Why can't I enter my own house?" Natalie hesitated, glanced over her shoulder, and stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind her. "It seems Ryan was going to talk to you about that. Talk about you're no longer living here." Silence fell like a brick. Evelyn tightened her grip on the bag, unsure what to do with her hands. "What did you say, Natalie?" She managed a nervous smile, the kind used to mask awkwardness. "These are just formalities, nothing personal. Ryan said that you agreed to transfer the house to him." "What did he say?" "You signed the papers a couple of weeks ago, remember? All those documents at the kitchen table." Evelyn froze. In a haze, the pieces began falling into place. When she asked, Ryan had brushed her off, calling it just a formality, a legal precaution to protect the house in case something happened to her. She trusted him, her son. Now her hands trembled. Natalie didn't wait for more questions. She slipped back inside, muttering something about calling Ryan, and the door snapped shut behind her. Evelyn stood there for a minute, then 5, then 10. No one answered. She didn't knock again. Slowly, she descended the porch, still cradling the chicken like a child. She didn't know where she was going, but she was sure she would never return to that house. Ryan hadn't just taken her home, he had taken something far greater. But Evelyn was on the verge of remembering who she once was, long before papers, before Natalie, before her porch became foreign. She had been more than just a woman in a house. She had been a mother. Not just any mother, but the mother of that boy whom no one else had wanted. In 1996, Evelyn worked the night shift at St. Joseph Hospital in Jackson, Mississippi. She was a nurse, strong, reliable, a woman with a gentle voice who had made peace with the fact that she would never have children of her own. 2 miscarriages, and a failed IVF had left her with an invisible scar, deep and unchanging. But one night, it had been Ryan. He had been brought in with a fractured wrist to pale, skinny 2-year-old in a t-shirt 3 sizes too big with mustard stains on the collar. His foster mother didn't even stay at the hospital. She left him with the social workers and walked away. Evelyn hadn't planned to adopt. But sometimes God doesn't knock. Sometimes he simply places a child in your arms and waits to see if you'll let go. Ryan was silent for days, clinging to the hem of her scrubs like a lifeline. He wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat unless she fed him herself. Something about her made him feel safe. And that was enough. Within 2 months, she filed the first set of papers. Within 6, he bore her last name. Her friends thought she was Crazy Ann, unmarried black woman in her 30s, adopting a white toddler with behavioral issues. "Girl, what? You trying to save the whole world?" They asked. "No," she replied, "just this one." Evelyn gave Ryan everything she herself had never had. A bedroom with a race car bed, school lunches labeled with his name in marker, swimming lessons, piano lessons, Saturday trips to the zoo. He had asthma. She found the best pediatrician. Struggled with reading. She hired a tutor. She even taught him how to braid dolls hair so he'd know how to care for his future daughter. She made him write thank you notes after Christmas. and never missed a single parent-teacher conference. But it wasn't perfect. As he grew older, Ryan began to change. In middle school, he started asking questions. Why don't I look like you? Why do people stare at us in the store? Why does everyone think I'm adopted? She always answered the same way, because you are adopted. But that doesn't mean you're not mine. He never fully accepted that. In high school, he grew distant. In college, he barely came home. And when he did, it was always fleeting, just long enough to sleep. Grab dinner, mumble, "Hey, Mom," and disappear with his phone in hand. But Evelyn never complained. She left the porch light on, kept his old room just as he had left it, believed that love, even quiet love, could still make things right. Then her husband died, and suddenly Ryan started coming around more often. At first, he helped clean the gutters, mowed the lawn, reminded her to take her blood pressure pills. Sometimes he brought Natalie. They'd sit on the porch while Evelyn made cornbread and watched her game. Shows she thought things were healing, but she didn't know Ryan hadn't come back to reconnect. He came to assess what could be taken by the time she realized that her name was no longer on the deed. Her trust had been sold for pennies. But a mother does not forget. And Evelyn was already beginning to remember every sacrifice she had made. That night she slept in her car, parked 2 blocks from the house her house no longer. Across the street stood a row of duplexes, their paint-peeling plastic chairs sun-bleached on front porches. She didn't cry, not once. Stayed fixed on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, even after the engine had gone cold. The rotisserie chicken sat on the passenger seat, now cold. Its grease seeping through the plastic dot. Evelyn stared through the windshield, seeing nothing. Grief weighed heavy in her chest, not just from the loss of someone she loved, but from the realization of who they had perhaps never truly been. 3 years ago, when her husband Leonard died of a misdiagnosed blood clot, Evelyn thought pain couldn't cut deeper. He had been her anchor, quiet man of steady presence. They had met in church, fallen in love over fried catfish and scripture, spent 29 years building a home filled with faith and forgiveness. But this pain betrayal burned in a different way. The next morning, Evelyn drove to the bank to check her account, partly from habit, partly from necessity. It was almost laughable. The balance was untouched. Ryan hadn't touched those funds. He didn't even know they existed. After Leonard's death, the hospital had tried to brush it off as a natural complication. But Evelyn, who had been a nurse, too long had seen the truth. She hadn't let it go. She filed complaints, contacted an old friend who was an attorney, and 2 years later, won a malpractice lawsuit no one expected her to win. $9.5 million. She hadn't told anyone, not even Ryan. She had transferred the money to a separate trust, under her maiden name, split across several accounts, not out of paranoia, but for peace of mind. For something sacred and private, because money changes people. And some things are better kept in the dark. Sitting in the bank lobby that day, her ankles swollen, her heart bruised, Evelyn realized something else. Ryan hadn't just betrayed her trust, he had underestimated her. She no longer had a house, but she had resources. She had knowledge, okay? And she had one weapon Ryan had never learned to use: patience. Evelyn checked into a motel in Meridian, paying cash 2 nights, no questions asked. She didn't need comfort. She needed a plan. But more than anything, she needed time to remember who the hell she was. She flipped through an old notebook she carried in her bag, filled with prayers, phone numbers, reminders to call her sister in Lafayette. On the last page, a note written on the day her lawsuit was settled. Don't let money make you louder. Let it make you quieter. Let it buy you time. She smiled at that line. Ryan thought he had thrown her out. He had no idea he had just set her free. Freedom isn't comfort, not yet. And Evelyn still had miles to go before she would rise from the ashes. The first time Ryan placed that stack of papers in front of her, it was a Sunday. Evelyn had been sitting at the kitchen table folding dish towels while the oven ticked away. finishing a sweet potato pie. Her knees ached from the coming rain. She could feel it in her bones, but she smiled anyway. Ryan walked in without knocking. Evelyn didn't like surprises, but she told herself maybe he just missed me. He wore a fitted shirt that looked like it belonged to someone else. Natalie trailed behind him, eyes locked on her phone. "Hey, Mom," he said, hugging her for half. "A second, we brought some papers. Nothing major, just for taxes and some house stuff. You know, formalities." Evelyn frowned. "What kind of papers?" Ryan pulled a folder like a magician, revealing a card-trick trust documents, property. "Transfers, something about power of attorney. We checked everything," he said. "Natalie's firm does this all the time. Just basic protection." Natalie added from behind her screen, "It's just to safeguard your assets, Miss Carter. Avoid probate disputes. You'll still be covered. I didn't ask anyone to." "Safeguard anything," Evelyn said softly, hands resting on the unfolded towel. Ryan chuckled. I know. That's why we're doing it for you. Look, if something happened to you, God forbid, be a mess trying to deal with the house if everything's in your name. It just keeps it all in the family." Evelyn looked down at the pages. The words blurred slightly. She rarely wore her reading glasses. They pinched her nose. Ryan noticed here. He said, handing her a pen. "I highlighted where to sign. Nothing to worry about." She hesitated. She wanted to say something like, "Maybe I should let a lawyer look this over," or "Why? Do you need power of attorney right now?" But Ryan was her baby, the same boy who used to cry if she walked past his crib, who needed an inhaler when he got too excited, who at age 6 wouldn't fall asleep with the chicken pox unless he held her hand. So she signed, page after page. He even joked while she was signing, "You're making history, Mom." She gave a short laugh, barely more than a breath. The oven timer dinged and she got up to turn it off. That moment stayed with her for days. The smell of cinnamon and burnt sugar, the snap of the pen cap. Natalie smiled, too satisfied to be sincere. She didn't know it yet, but that would be the last time she ever sat at that kitchen table. After that day, Ryan's visits became shorter. He started showing up with bank statements and people Evelyn didn't want to meet, investors. He called them. He was always busy now, talking about real estate deals, building portfolios, how her home was an asset just waiting to be utilized. And he started calling her Evelyn in front of Natalie. That was new. One afternoon, while she was watering her begonias, she overheard Natalie say, "Once we close on this house, we can finally get an apartment in Dallas." That night, Evelyn started packing a small emergency bag just in case. She placed inside her Bible, her passport, the last photo of Leonard, and the notebook with the account information Ryan had never known about. Her body didn't move as quickly as it once had, but her mind was still sharp. Sharp enough to recognize the moment when love starts to rot. Evelyn hadn't come this far in life just to watch everything she had built vanish. And she wouldn't leave without reminding Ryan, whose name he had erased from those papers. The day Ryan called her a guest in her own home, Evelyn didn't say a word. It was a Wednesday afternoon. She had just finished vacuuming the living room, something she still liked to do herself, despite her niece's protests. "Dust doesn't care how old you are," she used to say. Evelyn believed in a clean house, no matter who was watching. Ryan walked in without removing his sunglasses, earbuds dangling from his neck. Natalie followed mid-conversation on Bluetooth. They didn't greet her, just walked by like she was. The help. Then Ryan paused, turned, and said casually, "Hey, next time you use the Dyson, could you clean it out? We've got people coming this weekend to look at the house." Evelyn blinked. "People? Realtors? Just getting an estimate. Market research, you know." She looked at him. "You're selling the house?" He chuckled, like she'd asked if he was moving to the moon. "Not yet. Just thinking ahead. Gotta consider all options." She straightened. "Our options." And then he said it. "You're a guest now, Mom. Of course, it's still your space. But legally, well, you. Get it?" Her hand clenched the vacuum handle tighter. She didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't reply. She just nodded once. That night. She packed for real. Not much, only the essentials. The Bible, the notebook, 2 dresses, 1 pair of sneakers. And the wedding ring she hadn't worn since Leonard's death, but kept in a small pouch by her. Bedrian didn't ask where she was going. Natalie didn't care. They had what they wanted. Or thought they did. Evelyn checked into a budget motel on the far side of town, near a gas station and a truck stop with flickering lights. The bed squeaked. When she sat down, the heater wheezed like it had asthma. But it was hers, and it was quiet. She sat at the little table and opened her notebook. There was a number she'd kept for 14 years. Doris. Doris worked with a nonprofit that helped elderly women navigate housing laws. She had once helped Evelyn when a tenant tried to sue her over a plumbing issue. Evelyn dialed. 1 ring, 2, disconnected. She sighed. Then she remembered Clarence C.J. Bella, friend of Leonard's from the old neighborhood. A lawyer, long retired but sharp as a blade and twice as stubborn. They hadn't spoken in years. She called anyway. It rang 6 times before a raspy voice answered. This better be Jesus or trouble. Evelyn smiled. Maybe both. CJ, it's me. I need to talk. CJ didn't need convincing. Real friends remember who brought them casserole after surgery. He'd been expecting a call like this. They met the next morning at a diner off I-20. The kind that still served coffee in heavy ceramic mugs, and called. Everyone, baby, whether you were 8 or 85. CJ looked older than she remembered, his beard now fully gray. Eyes a little foggier, but his thick eyebrows and dry wit still made people think twice before lying to his face. Look like hell, he said, sliding into the booth across from her. Evelyn smiled. Good morning to you too. He took a sip of black coffee. No cream, no sugar, just like Leonard used to drink. All right, he said, setting the mug down. Start from the beginning. Don't skip. Don't soften. Just tell it all. And she did. She told him everything about the papers. Ryan tricked her into signing. About the changed locks. About him calling her a guest. About Natalie, the realtors, and the 2 sweet smiles. CJ didn't interrupt once when she finished. He leaned back and exhaled long and low. He hustled you, he said. Played you good. But he made one big mistake. Evelyn looked down at her napkin. I signed the papers. CJ? Yes, but that's signature under false pretenses. That's not necessarily legal, especially if you weren't informed or if the documents were misleading. She raised an eyebrow. You think we can sue? CJ smirked. Evie, I could sue him in my sleep. She laughed, but it came out hollow. I'm tired, CJ. I don't want to destroy him. I just want my house back. I want to look in the mirror and not feel like a damn fool. CJ nodded slowly. Then, we won't destroy him. We'll educate him. For the next 2 hours, they went through everything what she remembered signing. What dates, what conversations. Evelyn, ever the nurse, had documented more than she realized. She had notes in her notebook. Dates, times, impressions, everything. CJ explained the legal steps, which attorney he'd bring in, how to petition the court to determine if the transfer was fraudulent, and what to do if it went to trial. That's when Evelyn said something she hadn't told anyone. I have money, CJ. He blinked. You mean a little tucked away? No, real money, a settlement from the hospital. $9.5 million. CJ almost dropped his mug. Jesus! I never touched it. Didn't want Ryan to know. Didn't want anyone to know. CJ shook his head. You sat on $9 million and let that boy walk you out of your own house. I didn't want the money to change my love for him, she said softly. CJ didn't respond right away. He just looked at her. Then he reached across the table, covered her hand with his. It did change. He changed. Evelyn turned to look out the window at the distant highway. Her reflection in the glass looked older than she felt, worn but unbroken, cracked but still standing. I want to do this right, she said. No cameras, no noise. I just want my name back on my door. CJ nodded. We'll get it back. Before lawyers, before court. There was one last thing Evelyn needed to do, a final attempt to speak not to the man Ryan had become, but to the boy she once knew. She didn't call ahead. She knew he'd either ignore the call or pass it to Natalie, so she just showed up.